laugh at you.
He walked into my house and said, "This is my last night in France this year."
Abba. 4 people from Sweden not only put their country on the world map, but also dragged the Eurovision Song Contest kicking and screaming into more modern times. But their attempts to reach abroad and show themselves and their music were made several times before 1974, when they finally stood there as a group in Brighton. This program was originally to be recorded with one of the members themselves, but unfortunately there was no time, and through their manager Gerald Hanse, they finally said no. What could they possibly be busy with? Anyway, since I was a big ABBA fan since I was a child, I have read everything I could come across, and I realized a few years ago that almost all my books were written by the same man, Carl-Magnus Palm. So instead I contacted him. He knows more about ABBA than themselves. The idea was from the beginning to only do one episode, but it was completely impossible because we could not stop talking and delve into the topics ABBA, Melodifestivalen and Eurovision, which easily happens when I am talking. In this episode, we will get to know how the road to Brighton went, how many songs were submitted over the years to the Swedish pre-selection, who sang them and what they sounded like, but also what happened behind the scenes in Melodifestivalen and Eurovision. In the second episode, we get to know what happened after the victory in Brighton, why Björn and Benny wrote a song for Melodifestivalen already the following year, why Sweden boycotted Eurovision 1976, what happened to their collaboration with manager Stikkan Andersson, whether Agnetha and Frida were enemies or friends, how many ABBA songs were recorded that were never released, and what Carl-Magnus can tell us about the new album, Voyage. This is Eurovision Legends with your own Agnetha Fältskog wannabe, Emil Löfström. Welcome to Eurovision Legends, Carl-Magnus Palm.
Thank you, Emil. How are you today?
I'm very good. I'm so glad to talk to you.
Oh, thank you.
I believe you know more about ABBA than ABBA themselves, so this is a privilege to have you here since the group members, through the manager, Gerald Hanse, declined this invitation. And with that said, please don't feel like you are the second choice.
Well, I am the second choice, so that's fine. I'm used to that. That's all right.
Since I am the biggest fan of ABBA myself, I have read all your books and have, thanks to you, a big knowledge about them already. And in this episode, we will focus on how they tried to get to Eurovision through the Swedish pre-selection, Melodifestivalen, and later conquered the world.
Okay.
Shall we begin with a short biography of the 4 members to put them on the map? Can we begin with the oldest of them, Björn Ulvaeus, born in 1945?
Yes, Björn was born in April 1945. He moved to a town called Västervik in the county of Småland, Sweden's east coast. He grew up there. He started playing the guitar when he was about 13, I think, and eventually he joined a folk band, and they got a record contract with a record company called Polar Music, which was run by Stig Andersson and another man called Bengt Bernhag. So they signed this group, the Hotenanny Singers, to their label, and they became very, very popular in Sweden. They recorded folk-style music to begin with, and then it turned into more like, light pop hits. They sang in Swedish for the most part.
Gabriel, torka tåren, när det grönskar i snåren, skall jag komma med våren, nämligen Gabriel.
And then if we're going to take them in order of age, next up is Annifrid Lyngstad, known as Frida, who was also born in 1945, in November 1945. She started singing very early. You know, music was always a big thing for her. She was 13 when she joined a dance band in this town where she grew up called Torshälla, a small, very small town. And she sang in dance bands for a decade or so. And she had her breakthrough at the age of 21 when she won a talent contest. And she was, as a surprise, she was whisked away to a television studio and she performed the song she won with, which was called En ledig dag, which translates as a day off, basically.
Yeah.
And that became her big breakthrough. That was 1967. She got a record contract and everything after that.
Var en ledig dag, så fylld av välbehag. Jag gick i solen, kände värmen, jag var glad. Från havet kom musik till varje liten vik. Till just denna sköna dag, en härlig ledig dag.
Continuing to December 1946, when Benny Andersson was born. He started playing the accordion at age 5 or 6 or something, got his first piano when he was 10 years old, and then he just played the piano every day and still does to this day. He played in a number of bands, but he was 17 years old when he joined a rock band called the Hep Stars. And a few months after that, they had their big breakthrough in the spring of 1965 with a song called Cadillac, which they performed on Swedish television.
My baby drew up in a brand new Cadillac. My baby drew up in a brand new Cadillac. But she ain't never ever coming back.
And after that, they became the biggest pop band of the 1960s in Sweden. You know, they had a string of number one hits. They sold more records than anyone. They had more concert, gig bookings and stuff like that for the duration of the 1960s. So they were really huge. And then the youngest one in Abba is Agnetha, who was born in April 1950. Like the others, she also started with music very early, started playing the piano at age 5, I think, wrote her first song when she was 6 years old.
Två små troll träffades en dag. Två små troll lekte med varann. Hej sa den ene, hej sa den andra. Kom ska vi leka med varann. Någonting sådär.
She began writing songs more regularly when she was in her teens. She had a girl trio and they performed locally and stuff. And then she joined a dance band when she was 16 years old. She had written a song called Jag var så kär, I was so in love, for the dance band. And they sent a tape to a record company, and the record company thought, well, we like this song and we like the girl. So they didn't sign the dance band, they signed Agnetha only. She was only 17 years old.
Yeah.
And the first song they recorded was this song, Jag var så kär, I was so in love. And that became her first hit. She was number one on the sales chart with that. And this is the 1960s, so that was highly unusual for a girl to sing, and a young girl at that, to sing her own songs and have huge hits with them. So she was a bit of a pioneer. So by the late 60s, that's where we find the 4 members of Abba doing all these things.
And only 1 year later, she released songs in Germany too. How did this come about?
Swedish performers perhaps especially female performers, were quite popular in Germany in the 1960s. I mean, singers like Siw Malmkvist, for instance, she had like a parallel career in West Germany. And had huge hits there, million sellers and stuff like that, and Lill-Babs and
Sylvia
Vrethammar, Bibi Jones, Nina Lisell, people like that. Lots of singers. So, you know, she was blonde. She was a typical Swedish blonde, and so they thought, oh, we might probably be able to do something with this girl here, you know, another good Swedish singer that we can try to market here. So that's how that happened, I think.
We listen to some of her minor hits in Germany.
Ein kleiner Mann in einer Flasche ist ne völlig neue Masche, drum verstecke ihn an einem guten Ort. Ein kleiner Mann in einer Flasche, das beste Pompadour war wunderbar im alten Schloss bei Kerzenschein, denn auf diesem Ball begann mein Glück, da traf ich dich. Und das war Robinson Crusoe auf seiner Insel ganz allein. Senor González erreichte alles, was wollte mit dem treuen Blick. Senor González, im Fall des Falles, mit diesem Trick, da haben Sie beide kein Glück. Sunny Boy, ich hab geträumt von dir. Sunny Boy, du stehst vor meiner Tür. Geh mit Gott, mit dir war es schön. Wie nur wird die Zeit mir vergehen, noch weiß ich nicht die Antwort darauf. Im Leben geht's bergab, bergauf. Doch ich schreib sie alle nur an dich. Denn Liebe, wahre Liebe, die gehört zu Liebesbriefen schon dazu.
Can we go back to Björn? Because I wonder, between 1968 and 1969, he released 4 solo singles with lyrics by Stikkan Andersson. Why did he go solo?
Well, by that time, 1968, where the group members were starting to think about, you know, what are we going to do? We can't go on with the group forever. Who knows how long this will last? So most of the members started studying at the university, and Björn was more like, no, I don't want to. He started studying, but he was like, you know, I really want to remain in the music business. And I know that Stig Andersson, he wanted to bring Björn into the company. He wanted him to become part of Polar music and stuff like that. So they had these songs. He had bought the rights to this song called Honey, which was a huge hit in the United States. It was #1 forever. And he translated that and it became Raring. And, you know, they needed a solo singer for that. It wouldn't be appropriate for a group to sing that. So they asked him, you know, do you want to do that? And, you know, try to establish a career for Björn outside of the Hotenanny Singers, basically.
I val av mönster till gardin, ja till och med i köksporslin, jag ser din hand. Och kaktusen är lika ful som då du köpte den en jul, men blommar ibland. Jag ser en sprucken vas och ler, jag minns så väl då den föll ner på tån på dig.
And Björn and Benny met in 1966.
Yes, that's right. They were out touring. Both bands, the Hotenanny Singers were out touring. The Hep Stars were out touring in June 1966. And they just happened to meet while they were, you know, the Hep Stars were leaving this place where they had just played. and the Hotenanny Singers were going to the same place to do their show. These were only like 30-minute shows, so it wasn't like a big spectacular thing or anything like that. And so they met outside there and, wound down the windows and said, hi, we're going to have a party tonight. The Hotenanny Singers were having a party. They told the Hep Stars, you should come along. So they came along eventually in the middle of the night, very late at night, 2:00 or something. And there was like an immediate connection between Bjorn and Benny at that party because, they discussed, both were Beatles fans and both of them enjoyed writing songs. They were basically the only members in their, respective groups who liked writing songs. So they talked a lot about that and say, we should try to write a song together sometime. And they actually did. About 2.5 weeks later, they got the opportunity to do that in conjunction with another party. And they went to first of all, they went to the basement of the apartment building where Bjorn and his family lived, and they started setting up instruments there. But, it was very noisy and it was in the middle of the night. So Bjorn's dad came running down and said, you're waking up the entire building. Take my keys here to the paper mill where I work. And he had an office at this local paper mill in the town of Västervik. And he said, you can sit at my office, you won't disturb anyone there. So they went there and they sat songwriting all night. And by the time they were finished, they had a song called Isn't It Easy to Say, which the Hep Stars recorded later that year.
She's leaving today. What could I say? My Lord, how I miss her. I'm sitting alone here in my woe. And the treetops they whisper, isn't it easy to say, I'll go my way, am I the first one to pray that she will stay?
And 2 years later, Agnetha Fältskog composed a song called Försonade for the singer Gunnar Wiklund, who was invited to participate in Melodifestivalen and search for songs. But that song was rejected. Do you know if this was the first year a member of Abba submitted a song to the Swedish pre-selection for Eurovision?
Well, as far as I know, this was the first time. I don't know it would have been Bjorn or Benny who tried maybe, but I've never heard that they did that.
In any way, Gunnar Wiklund competed in 1968, but with another song, and the year after, in 1969, both Benny Andersson and Annifrid Lyngstad competed. Benny as a composer, together with the Eurovision contestant from 1975, Lasse Berghagen, and Annifrid as a singer. What can you tell us about the two songs, Hey Clown and Härlig är vår jord?
Well, Hey Clown was written by Benny Andersson and Lasse Berghagen, as you said. And this was a period when they were writing songs together for whatever reason. I'm not entirely certain how they started writing songs, but they were a team and they were more prolific than Bjorn and Benny as a team at this time. So they wrote this song together, and that's basically all I know about it. And it was performed by Jan Malmsjö in the contest.
And for the first time in the Melodifestivalen, 2 entries ended up as winners.
Yes, it was a bit of a drama there, because they ended up with the same score.
Hej clown, kom hit så vi får titta på dig. Hej clown, kom ut, vi vill så gärna säga hej clown. Ta med din röda näsa och kom ut hit till oss. Snälla hej clown, kom ut och sjung och dansa för oss. Hej clown, nu vill vi allihopa se på dig clown. Försynda på, vi måste snart gå hem.
Hey Clown and this other song called Jude min vän, which was recorded as Dear Mr. Jones in English.
Yeah.
Watching the kids on a Monday morning, dads at work on a play. Loads to be done, but it keeps on yawning, cursing the break of day. Ask the bankman for a loan. Tell him all about your home. Get a friend for life, just like your wife ought to be here, Mr. Jones.
They both ended up with the same score. They were both at number one, so to speak, because they had the exact same score. But then to sort of resolve the situation, they had a new voting just between those two songs. And that time, Judy Min Vän came out on top, so that became the winner, and Hey Clown was number 2. But it was very, very close.
Yeah.
They could easily have won that contest with Hey Clown, and who knows how this would have developed, how history would have developed if they'd won.
And Judy Min Vän later got a 9th place in Madrid. And I think we need to mention here that Judy Min Vän was sung by Tommy Körberg, that also competed for Sweden in Eurovision in 1988. And he has been working with Björn and Benny several times and is a member of Benny Andersson's orchestra today.
Yes, he is, he sang in Chess. That's when he started working with them for real. But there's also, interestingly enough, he also sang another song by Björn and Benny on a radio contest on Swedish radio also in 1969, which was called Oozy McDoozy, which he never released.
Oozy McDoozy, hur känns det idag? Zackadidoda, jag vet nog. Du var på party men inte med mig. Zackadidoda, jag vet nog. Du kom hem rätt sent, jag vet nog vad du gjorde. Oozy McDoozy.
So that was the first time that Benny and Tommy worked together. Chess was not the first time, as most people believe. They had a previous relationship, yeah.
And the other song then, Härliga vår jord, sung by Annie Frid.
I don't know so much about the song as such. It was written by Ivan Renliden, who was a songwriter, arranger, and I think he was connected to EMI, the Frida's record company at the time, in some way. And since she was an EMI recording artist, I guess it was natural that she performed this song.
Härlig är vår jord, härligt är att vara till. Inga vackra ord säger vad det är jag vill. Men i ett djurland väldigt liv kan jag känna mig glad och fri. Det är skönt, så jätteskönt, så skönt.
She deserved to win, but she didn't.
She tied 4th, and the song never became a hit in Sweden.
I mean, 1969 in Melodifestivalen, that was a really, really good year. Many really, really good songs in the contest that year, the Swedish one.
Jag for till Deutschland och på min semester Junge träffade jag i Berlin. Han sade någonting om svenska flicka. Jag svarade ja, för han var ju så fin. Anna, ich liebe dich, så var det han sa. Anna, ich liebe dich, det kunde han bra. Ju mer jag ser dig, ju mer jag känner jag din kärlek. Och att du ber mig, det vill jag göra för jag älskar dig. När du är nära, då strålar livet av min kärlek. Jag kan inte leva utan dig.
And that year, 1969, I believe Björn, Benny and Stikkan composed a song that was submitted, Ljuva 60-tal, that Brita Borg later recorded.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that was also a really good song,
Fantastic song, I must say.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it was rejected. It would have been made, I don't know to what extent it would have worked in the Eurovision Song Contest, but it became a big hit in this country in 1969, so certainly would have done well in Melodifestivalen.
Man sa så mycket
om sex, ljuva 60-tal. Så man fick nya komplex, ljuva 60-tal. Man for till månen i stora rör av plåt, storhetid. Man bar sig åt gamla härliga tid, ljuva 60-tal. Nu må du vila i fri, ljuva 60-tal. Då levde ännu den stora kärleken. Tänk ändå, så länge sen.
It's a mystery sometimes how the selection juries, their line of reasoning.
Yeah.
But for some reason something didn't feel right, I guess.
And Brita Borg was the second contestant for Sweden in Eurovision with the song Augustin, which ended 9th in Cannes in 1959. In 1970, the pre-selection Melodifestivalen was cancelled as a protest to the fact that 4 countries tied for the victory in 1969. And in 1971, the Swedish television decided that 3 acts would compete. Family 4, Tommy Körberg and Sylvia Vrethammar. And that composer could submit songs to these artists. I know that none of the 15 competing songs in the pre-selection was composed by any Abba member, but do you know if they submitted anything?
They did. They submitted 2 songs. Det kan ingen doktor hjälpa.
Yep.
Which was recorded by Björn and Benny later on with Agnetha and Frida on backing vocals, which I don't think is a particularly good song. It's professional. All the elements are there, but it feels a little forced, I think. It tries to be funny, but it isn't.
Du arbetar dag och natt. Det kan ingen doktor hjälpa. Att du ska betala skatt. Det kan ingen doktor hjälpa. Du börjar få svårt för skratt. Det kan ingen doktor hjälpa. Man får hålla sitt humör och vi kämpar alla för att få leva tills vi dör.
And then the other song was Välkommen till världen, which I think is a Björn and Benny composition only. The other one had lyrics by Stig Andersson, which I think is a much, much better song. It's really catchy and upbeat, and I'm surprised it was rejected. But, you know, they had a big hit with that song, with Lill-Babs, and Björn and Benny, Agnetha and Frida sing amazing backing vocals on it. So that's a really, really great song, I think.
Vem du än är så välkommen till världen. Jag ska vara med vart du än ställer färden. Många långa vägar ska du gå. Många långa vägar ska du. Många hårda törnar ska du gå. Men ändå, vem du än är så välkommen till livet. Du ska få se när du tar första klivet att det väntar många stora äventyr när din första morgon.
And I believe that song later was recorded in several other languages as well.
I'm sure it was. I think it was recorded in... I think Lill-Babs recorded the German version, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Så vill du att vissa är välkommen av föden. Vad saker skit du sålts glücklich werden.
And then there was this it's kind of bizarre that this happened. Lonnie Donegan, who was a very, very important artist in the 1950s in the UK because he pioneered skiffle, which was a very, kind of folk music inspired type of music where you played, instead of a drums, you had a, what do you call it, a wash thingy, which you did the rhythm on, and instead of a proper bass, you had a tea-chest bass, like a big box and a string, and so it was, everyone could play that. And anyway, that inspired a lot of people to start bands, like the Beatles, And I know that Björn and his cousin were also inspired by that to start the first band that Björn was in back in Västervik. So he was really influential there for a few years. But now by the early 70s, he wasn't really that big anymore. But someone wrote English lyrics for that song, Välkommen till världen. I lost my heart on the 5:42. And and Lonnie Donegan recorded that song. So it's kind of weird how these things happen. I think obviously this must have happened because Stig Andersson was so good at selling songs abroad, or he tried everywhere there was someone who was interested in a song. He said, yeah, please take my song and write English lyrics to it. We want you to do that. Yeah. Please get it recorded.
I lost me heart on the 5:42. That semi-fast train platform 12 Waterloo. It was crowded as can be. She was squeezed up close to me. Then I looked at her and so she smiled. And that's when I lost me heart.
So I'm not exactly sure how it found its way to Lonnie Donegan, but it's a catchy song. It's a great song. So people should be lining up to record it. I'm surprised that not more people were interested.
I think there is a Norwegian version of it too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
The year after, in 1972, Björn and Benny, together with the manager Stikkan Andersson, got through the selection panel, finally, with a song sung by Lena Andersson, titled Säg det med en sång. Before anything else, do you know if this was the only song they submitted and wrote for this project?
I haven't heard of any other songs. I guess this was the song they submitted. I mean, maybe because at this time, the B-side of that single of Säg det med en sång was a song called Cecilia. Not the Simon and Garfunkel song, obviously. And Björn and Benny had recorded a version of that in 1971, which was never released. So maybe they submitted that as well,
Cecilia, hon sörjer, säger våg som sakta slår. Cecilia, kom ut till oss och se att det är vår. Cecilia, säg låt dig torka bort ditt hår. Cecilia, ropar vi, låt mig leka med ditt hår. Du är så blek, du är så ung.
But obviously Säg det med en sång was, that when you listen to that song, you can tell that that's the one with the hit potential.
Säg det med en sång, det du vill ha sagt, och en värld ska lysa. Sjung den om igen, kanske fastnar den, människan behöver väckas gång på gång. Säg det med en sång, till en melodi, känner inga gränser. Orättvisor, tvång, listan kan bli lång. Säg det med en sång.
I love this song, even if I'm not a fan of the singer Lena Andersson on a personal or professional level at all, but this song was the big hit from that pre-selection. And the song was recorded later in English too, by Lena.
Yeah.
Love him right or wrong, love him most of all. One day you'll call. Better to have loved, better to have lost, than never loved at all.
I think they recorded the English version and the Swedish version at the same time. They traveled to London to record both those versions. So, there are backing vocals on the Swedish version by English singers, so they had to learn the lyrics phonetically so that they could sing it properly, which is interesting. And I think the reason they did that in London with an arranger called Arthur Greenslade, who was quite popular, quite in demand at the time. I think maybe that was part of, Bjorn and Benny and Stig. They're thinking big, thinking international, thinking, this must sound like an international recording. So I think that may have been part of it.
While Lena Andersson was in the UK singing her song, Abba was formed. How did this come about?
Well, there were many things happening at the same time in 1972. Bjorn and Benny had this dream together with Stig Andersson, and Bjorn and Benny were employed as producers at Polar Music at the time, plus they had a publishing company together, which they owned together with Stig. So they were like a trio, who were trying to break out internationally. And Bjorn and Benny had done, mostly over the past couple of years, they'd done songs in Swedish, and it had been, Schlager type songs, light pop songs, and maybe they were dreaming of doing English language pop music and trying to reach out of Sweden. And in 1972, quite unexpectedly, they got a big hit in Japan with a song called She's My Kind of Girl, which they'd recorded a couple of years earlier. Yeah. And that was released in Japan and became a surprise hit there. It was, it went top 10. And it's very, very difficult for non-Japanese acts to have a breakthrough like that.
Look at her face, it's a wonderful face, and it means something special to me. She's just my kind of girl, she makes me feel fine. Who could ever believe that she would be mine?
Anyway, with this success, there was suddenly demand for more English pop songs from Bjorn and Benny. So they thought, okay, we have an opportunity here. So they wrote this song called People Need Love, and it was structured in such a way that it would work as like a call and response thing between male singers and female singers. So they said to Agnetha and Frida, hey, would you like to do this song with us, and let's see how it works out. So they went to the Metronome studio in Stockholm in March 1972 and recorded this song, and that's where Abba were born, basically.
People need hope, people need loving, people need trust from a fellow man. People need love to make a good living, people need faith in a helping hand.
And the year after, in 1973, the four members would compete as singers. Do you know if Ring Ring, Bara du slog en signal, was the only song that was composed for this pre-selection?
I'm pretty certain, yes, because from what we know, they went out to this island called Vigsö in the Stockholm archipelago, where the Abba members and Stig Andersson had summer houses, and where Bjorn's property came with a little small guest cottage, where Bjorn and Benny had a piano and the two chairs and a table, basically, and where they would sit and write songs. So they went out there specifically in early January 1973 to come up with a song. And it says in Stig's diary from that date that, we wrote a song called Ring Ring, basically. That's what it says in his diary entry. So that would have been the only song they submitted, I'm pretty certain.
Instead of an open submission of songs, the Swedish television invited composers to the competition and let the composers decide together with the Swedish radio and television who should sing their song. Was it decided from start that Agnetha, Björn, Benny and Anni-Frid should compete as artists?
Yes, I think so. Because by that time, we're now in January 1973, by that time, Björn and Benny and Agnetha and Frida, they had started recording an album. They'd been doing that for a few months. They'd had a hit with People Need Love in Sweden. They'd also had a hit with a song called He Is Your Brother, which was a radio hit. It was number one on a chart called Tio I Topp, which translates as the top 10. Very important radio chart. So this was the group that they wanted to, they wanted to promote the recording act. And so it was self-evident, really, that they were going to be the group performing Ring Ring.
An English version of the song was made for the Eurovision in advance, written by Neil Sedaka and Phil Cody. Why did they get someone else to write the lyrics?
Well, according to what they said later, it was mainly to get some attention, to the song. Oh, wow, Neil Sedaka, because Neil Sedaka was a big star in the late 50s and 1960s and a respected person in the music business. And Stig, with his music publishing contacts, he knew him. And so that's how that happened, really. I don't think, if you listen to the lyrics of Ring Ring, I don't think they're so complex that Björn or Benny couldn't have written them themselves.
Exactly. Yep.
So I think it was more like, hey, here's something to grab your attention. Just they did anything to make things happen and make people sit up and take notice.
The song Ring Ring has also been recorded in German and Spanish, but that was later, right?
Well, not so much later.
Okay.
It was basically, I think, in the spring and summer of 1973, I think, July 1973. And it was a strange time because at that time, I think there was if you want to have breakthrough in Germany, you better sing in German. But nothing happened with that German version. But I think the English language version was quite a big hit in Germany. So I don't know why that was so necessary. And the Spanish version wasn't released at all at the time. It wasn't released until it was included on a Spanish language compilation CD in 1994, I think.
As we know, Ring Ring didn't win the Melodifestivalen, and the 4 members of Abba were devastated. How sad were they?
I think they were really upset and disappointed. I don't think they cried or anything like that, but they. The Ring Ring was the favorite to win that year. Everyone thought, okay, it's got to be Ring Ring. Not only them, and they of course thought that they were going to win. Stig Andersson was convinced they were going to win, and this was going to be, finally they're going to get to compete in the Eurovision Song Contest, and then the doors out to the world are open, and a glorious career awaits them. And, with the Neil Sedaka lyrics and the recording, which was kind of special as well. They'd really tried to be groundbreaking in the recording, and then nothing happens. So I think mainly Stig Andersson, I think he was really, really angry, and he even threatened we might never compete in, Melodifestivalen again if they don't change the rules and things like that. So.
And it's correct to say that the Swedish audience was not happy either. And Ring Ring became the big hit in Sweden on the charts. I believe the Swedish version was number 1. The English took 2nd place and the album was on the 3rd place due to record sales.
Yeah. For 2 weeks in a row, that's how the Swedish charts looked. Because at that time, the normal thing, so to speak, is that you have one chart for singles and one chart for albums. But in Sweden at the time, we had a chart that combined singles and albums.
Yeah.
So if it was an album that sold more than a single that week, that was number 1, and then single might be number 2, and so on. So for two weeks in a row in April 1973, that's how the chart looked. So that will tell you everything on how big Ring Ring was, both the singles and the album.
In retrospect, I think everyone's satisfied that Abba didn't compete in Eurovision in 1973. But do you remember what you felt there and then as a 7-year-old kid watching Abba get robbed?
Well, I probably was disappointed, because I know that I got the Ring Ring single for my birthday that year, my 8th birthday in April 1973. So quite clearly, that was my favorite song from the contest. So, yeah.
In 1974, Björn and Benny were invited back to the contest together with several other composers. And I believe that they were not 100% sure that Waterloo was the perfect choice at first. And they thought maybe Hasta Mañana would be a better song.
Yes, that's correct. They recorded Waterloo. They wrote and recorded Waterloo and felt, oh yeah, this has got to be the one. But at the same time, just around the same time, they recorded Hasta Mañana as well, and then they felt, this is pretty good as well, and it's more like Eurovision songs.
Hasta mañana till we meet again. Don't know where, don't know when. Darling, our love was much too strong to die. We'll find a way to face a new tomorrow. Hasta mañana, say we'll meet again. I can't do without you. Time to forget, send me a letter, say forgive, the sooner the better. Hasta mañana, baby, hasta mañana, until then.
And it's more like the songs that have won for the past few years, because you had, in 1973, you had Anne-Marie David with her, French ballad. Before that, 1972, Après toi, Vicky Leandros.
Après toi, je ne pourrai plus vivre, non plus vivre qu'en souvenir de toi.
And so on, going back. It was usually a solo female singer, and Hasta Mañana is, like a solo number for Agnetha. But then they decided, we're gonna submit Waterloo, because that's the image we want to project, and it's gonna be different, and we want to make a splash, and so they decided on that. And I also it wouldn't have been a good thing if they wanted to present themselves to the world. What is Frida gonna do when Agnetha is singing all her solo parts?
Yeah.
It's better to have a song where they both sing all the way through from start to finish.
I've heard that the working title for the song Waterloo was Honey Pie. Have you heard the original demo of the song?
I don't think there was ever original demo entitled Honey Pie. It was just, da 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 blah 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 da da, something like that.
Okay.
And Honey Pie was a title that Stig Andersson came across when he was trying to find the right title. He knew that the title had to be something da 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 da. So Honey Pie, and then he eventually came across Waterloo.
Some weeks before the show, a music group named Ajax sang all the 10 competing songs in a TV show. And shall we listen to what it sounded like when Ajax sang Waterloo? One of the artists who competed this year, Titti Sjöblom, the daughter of Lill-Babs, who in turn was the first Swedish participant in Eurovision, she told me that Benny had said to her that they were afraid that her song should win, since they had heard that the Swedish audience had liked her song the most when Ajax sang it. Do you know anything about this?
This is true, because there are interviews from around the time of Melodifestivalen in 1974, where Bjorn says, they ask the group, okay, so what do you think of your chances of winning? Well, I don't know, Benny says, I think this Fröken Ur song by Titti Sjöblom, that might win instead of us.
Yeah.
So it is true.
Tiki-tiki-tack från hundratals ställen. Tiki-tiki-tack från morgon till kvällen. Måndag till fredag med ordning och reda. Hela veckan på språng, varje timma ding-ding-dong. Tiki-tiki-tack från hundratals ställen.
She told me also something about how people had voted through postcards and that Waterloo got the third most votes. Is this true or down the road fabrication?
I don't know.
Me either. I've never heard about a postcard voting.
Yeah, I think that was also related to the Ajax performance, maybe, because they were previewed. Ajax previewed the songs in a program called Sveriges Magasin.
Yeah. For
a week, I think, and maybe that's when they sent the postcards. So yeah, I can imagine that some of the postcard writers may have preferred other songs.
Abba didn't only present a new style of music for the Swedish viewers this night, but also a new image. What can you tell us about their outfits that their designer Ove Sandström did not design for them?
Yes, that's right. This was before they had started collaboration with Ove. There was a shop here in central Stockholm called Gröna moln och blått gräs, which translates as green clouds and blue grass. And that shop had a kind of, they catered to people who wanted something a bit unusual. It was a bit, not outrageous necessarily, but different. And if you wanted to be seen and noticed, you could go there and buy clothes. And Frida, she's always been interested in fashion, and she would shop in there. And when they needed new costumes for Eurovision, she thought, maybe they can help us. And this shop was run by a lady called Inger Svenneke. So they went to her and said, could you do this for us? And she said yes. So in collaboration with her, they put together this outfit that was really meant to be seen. It was meant to make a splash, on television.
Yeah. Did they have to pay for the clothes themselves, or did the Swedish television or the record company pay for them?
I'm pretty sure the record company paid for them. Oh, yeah.
Do we know how much they cost?
We don't know that, no.
But how much do you think they are worth today?
Oh God, I have no idea. I'm the worst person to ask about how much this or that is worth. I don't know, but I imagine tens of thousands of kroner.
Yeah, sequins are really expensive.
Yeah, not because of the materials, I don't think, but...
No, just joking. Do you have any funny facts from this pre-selection regarding ABBA that you can share with us, or gossip?
Nej.
Well, I've heard that Titti Sjöblom, who was the favorite to win, she offered her place if she would win to ABBA.
Yeah, that's interesting. She Benny thought that she was the one who's going to win. So and she was kind enough to offer her place. I'm not sure that she was in a position to do that really, because if her song won, it's not like they could change the rules and send another song instead. But that was very nice of her and very kind of her. And I think she is a very nice and kind person. So I'm not surprised if she had made that offer.
By a margin of 91 points, ABBA won and got the tickets to Brighton. What happened then between Melodifestivalen and Eurovision for the group?
Well, this was the opportunity that they had been waiting for. So Stig Andersson, ABBA's manager, he felt, I'm not going to leave anything to chance. Well, to go back a bit in the story, the thing was that it turned out to be a blessing in disguise that they didn't win with Ring Ring in 1973, because Ring Ring, the song, was still a big hit in Sweden. It was a strong song, so Stig still did what he could to sell that song all over the world, wherever anyone was interested and across Europe. And many of these European and international record companies, they liked Ring Ring and said, yeah, we're going to release that. And they did, which meant that a year later, when they had Waterloo, they all of a sudden they had record contracts in place, or at least they had relationships with record companies in the UK, in West Germany, in the Netherlands, in France, all these places. So now he could come to them and say, hey, I have an even stronger song now, and actually this year we're going to compete with it in the Eurovision Song Contest. And once that had been settled, he went on a promotional trip, just Stig. He had all these promotional packs with the record and, press releases, biographies, and he went to the record companies in all these countries, or at least many of them, and just said to them, okay, you have this record on your label, and we're going to be in this competition, and we're going to be the group is going to be wearing crazy clothes, and they're going to make a splash, and they're going to be noticed, so make sure that you do the best you can with this song, whether we win or not,
Yeah.
So everyone was prepared, and I think, in contrast to many other Eurovision winners or Eurovision people who participated in Eurovision, they were prepared, because it's happened a number of times that this artist wins, but is the record already released in all these countries? No. So then maybe it takes a few weeks or a few months, and then interest maybe dies down meanwhile, but Stig had seen to it that Waterloo was already available in all these countries.
Yeah.
So when they finally won in Brighton, then it was like pushing a button, and everything became much bigger than it would have been otherwise.
Do you know what happened behind the scenes in Brighton before the show?
Well, the things that happened, they were, I mean, there were quite a few things. There was this party on one of the nights, you know, a night or two, I think, before the contest, where they had a bit of a scuffle with Mr. Mouth,
Yep.
of Mouth and McNeal, who I think had a few too many, maybe, and he was like, oh, you know, he grabbed Agnetha and lifted her up in the air and said, oh, you're Abba, you know, you think you're going to win, I'm going to win. I'm the greatest. And Frida remembered, you know, telling him off, you know, she lost her temper with him and said, you know, stop that, go away, you know. So there was a bit of a mini argument, so to speak. I don't think it was particularly serious, but it happened anyway. And the other thing was that because you were allowed to use a backing track, a pre-recorded backing track when you performed the song.
Yeah.
So ABBA did that because they wanted to use their professional studio recorded backing track. The thing was that the backing track was too low in the balance between the live vocals and the backing track was incorrect, so that the vocals were too high. So they tried to talk to the sound engineers and say, you gotta raise the volume of the backing track. It sounds crazy. It's not supposed to sound like this. And finally, Stig Andersson, you know, exploded. He wasn't, you know, he was short-tempered, to say the least, and he just exploded and went up to people. Can't anyone, you know, sort this out so that we get the sound that we want? And they finally raised the volume of the backing track, but I think they still felt it was a little too low, a little lower than they would have wanted it to. And yeah, so things like that happened during rehearsals.
Among the participants in Brighton, we find Olivia Newton-John singing for the United Kingdom. The Italian winner from 1964, Gigliola Cinquetti.
Per provare un'emozione che non ho avuto mai.
The German singer Irene Scheer, competing for Luxembourg with a song composed by the Eurovision legend Ralf Siegel, and this was actually his first try in the contest, and 23 more attempts would follow till this date. And we also had the duo that you talked about before that didn't get along, Mouth and McNeal from the Netherlands, with the song I See a Star, which I believe was Agnetha Fältskog's favorite, and also a favorite to win according to the betting odds.
Yes. I think they all thought that, you know, I See a Star would probably win.
I see a star, a brand new star. It's right there twinkling in your eyes. I see a face, a happy face. It's like the mirror of my mind.
I'm not surprised, you know, because that's a really great catchy song. I love I See a Star.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have been surprised if that won. And like you said, I think they also felt that Long Live Love by Olivia Newton-John could probably be winner, because the English at that time, in contrast to today, the British entries usually placed very high. So they thought that maybe that could be a winner instead of them as well.
Is the rumor true that Benny bet money on them winning?
Yes. I don't think that's a rumor. I think it's a fact. I think it's been printed. I think it was printed in newspapers and stuff at the time. And Stig Andersson also bet money, so both of them did. I don't know how much they won, but they won something. Because I think the odds were quite low. The odds were high to start with for Waterloo, but then as the week progressed, the odds became lower. They were not favorites anymore. So, yeah.
By a margin of 6 points, Sweden and Abba won. Italy came second and the Netherlands ended third. A funny nerd fact here is that the United Kingdom ignored and gave 0 points to Sweden, even though they sang about one of their biggest war victories ever. And isn't it funny, since the United Kingdom later became Abba's biggest market?
Yeah, I mean, that's insane when you think about it, that they didn't give it any points whatsoever. But we should remember that they didn't have that many points to give that year. It was not, with these 12 pointers and 10 whatever. So they could only give their scores to about 3 countries or something. I don't recall. Maybe you probably know this better than I.
I believe every jury member could give 1 point each.
Yeah. Exactly. So,
and they were 10 members in a jury.
Right. So if 5 of those jury members gave all their points to one song, then that was 5 points gone there, and they only had 5 points left. So it was a bit strange. Maybe they would have voted differently if the system had been different. But you're absolutely correct in saying that it's strange that they. And I mean, Waterloo was a number 1 hit in the UK, so...
Yeah, they did like Napoleon and surrendered.
Yeah.
Directly after this victory, their manager, Stig Andersson, had to answer questions from a Swedish journalist asking, I'm going to quote, "Last year you wrote a song about how you can phone each other, and this year you wrote a song about a battle in which thousands of people died. Comment on that?"
Yeah, I mean, that was the cultural climate at the time. This was regarded as commercial music, and the reporter they sent there was probably just a news reporter. And what do you do in a superficial music thing like the Eurovision Song Contest, which isn't serious at all, etc., etc., etc.? You try to find some kind of controversial question to ask, find an angle. And he says, like you said, he said, it's a song about how 40,000 people were killed. Well, it is not a song about how 40,000 people were killed, so he was wrong. It's just Waterloo as a concept, because, so-and-so has met his Waterloo. It just means that you have lost in a battle, symbolically speaking. And obviously, Stig, he was very angry when they turned off the cameras. He lost his temper and really gave this reporter a piece of his mind, so to speak, and told him to go away, but in less polite words.
Yeah. The year after, Björn, Benny and Stikkan competed in Melodifestivalen as composers for the 4th time. This time they gave the song Bang and Boomerang to the duo Svenne and Lotta, who they had previously worked with in Hep Stars. How come they choose to compete again already the next year?
Well, I think it was more about, okay, so we have launched Abba on the international market through Eurovision. Do we have any other acts on the Polar Music label that could have an international career? Well, Svenne and Lotta. Well, so what do? Well, to try to help them, you write a good song for them so that they can be in Melodifestivalen and hopefully win it and then go on to compete in Eurovision. So I think it was more about that than Björn and Benny being so eager to write songs for Eurovision.
ska till en viss teknik till det. Och man måste ha känsla med. Ge och dig ska vara givet. Det är lika sant som skrivet. Som en bank, en bumerang. Dam-i-dam, dam-i-dam, dam. Ge av dig själv och från en vän får du kärlek igen. En bank, en bumerang i bredd. En bumerang i kärlek.
Did they only submit Bang and Boomerang to Melodifestivalen in 1975, or did they have other entries in the pipeline as well?
I don't think they had any other entries, because this was a song that they had already recorded for Abba's third album, and they felt, okay, this is a good song, but we need to rewrite it. So they restructured it and wrote a new verses and things like that. So it's not like they had millions of songs lying around. The songs they wrote, they needed for themselves, for their own album. So I don't think they had like 2 or 3 different songs that they submitted to Eurovision.
And if you wanna tender, I'll kiss you, return to sender, please surrender. Bang, a boomerang, dum-me-dum, dum-me-dum-me-dum, dum. Oh, bang, a boomerang is love. A boomerang is love.
Yet again, the 3 composers had to settle for a third place, and the song that was meant to bring Svenne and Lotta to Europe instead became a minor hit with Abba themselves. I've heard from both Peter Grönvall, who is the son of Benny, and Hadar Kronberg, who himself competed in Melodifestivalen this year, that the original demo version that Abba recorded was way better than the version that they released in the end. Have you heard about this?
No, I didn't know that they had that opinion. I'm not sure I agree. I've heard that song, that demo version, and actually you can hear it sort of, because it was recorded as it was structured. It was recorded by a Danish singer called Ulla-Pia and released as a single.
Hvis du ligesom jeg nu er forelsket, ved du sikkert ganske vel. Kærligheden får man ikke, før man giver en smule af sig selv. Hver eneste ting, du gør for mig, gør jeg gerne for dig. Det er som en boomerang, da-di-dan, da-di-dan, da. Som en boomerang af kærlighed. Ja, som en boomerang.
I think it's much catchier the way they finally did it.
Was it ever even a possibility that Abba was going to compete with Bang and Boomerang themselves?
No. Once they had done what they set out to do, because I mean they were using Eurovision really as a platform to get themselves known in Europe. And once that had been done, so to speak, then they weren't interested to compete in Eurovision anymore as artists.
This was in the middle of the 70s, and ABBA was heavily criticized in Sweden and abroad for making very commercial music and not taking any stances on political issues. And in 1975, when Melodifestivalen was held in Gothenburg, it was flanked by huge demonstrations against the upcoming Eurovision in Stockholm. And in parallel with this, the protesters even put on an alternative festival with 950 musicians that gathered a crowd of 12,000 people, and it was broadcast on Swedish television's second channel at the same time as the Eurovision Song Contest. And this is hilarious, but not in a good way, since we are talking about non-political public service.
Well, these were strange times in Sweden in terms of cultural climate and things. It was very politicized. I think the main problem here was that, okay, so there are problems in the world. There is inequality. There is a lot of poor people starving in the world.
Like today.
Yeah, exactly, etc., etc. And if you want to make the world a better place, I don't think what you should do is to set your sights on artists performing music just because you don't like that. And I think they also miss the point, which is that, okay, sometimes maybe we want to listen to music that talks about, if not political issues, at least issues that has to do with the society we live in, the world we live in, the problems and reflections, philosophical reflections, whatever. But sometimes we also want music that is just music, that is a happy tune, that is catchy, that makes you feel good. And that has to be allowed to exist parallel with each other, I think. It's not one or the other, it's both. And to attack a song festival like that and think that you're going to accomplish anything by doing that, I think is very sad. I think it's very sad that they did that. They should have taken all that energy and put it into something worthwhile, something that could actually have accomplished something, rather than try to make people feel bad because they liked Ding a Dong or Bang a Boomerang.
A more long-term consequence of this anti-Eurovision sentiment was that Sweden withdrew from the 1976 competition, which wasn't even broadcasted on Swedish television. We all know what this victory for Abba later led to, but it wasn't so easy for them to have further success directly afterwards, abroad.